Hi everyone who's here. We're just waiting to let more people trickle in. But it's nice. We'll get started in a minute or
so. Thank you for having us.
I think the timing of our session was perfect, Julie and Alfonso.
No coincidence.
What, do the Trumpy?
Well, I mean, just that the results landed in some affirmative way when all the networks do it at the same time. It just,
I mean, Fox was the last one.
Well, it just alleviates a little of the,
yeah,
you know, gray cloud that's been over us for the last week, you know?
I mean, the thing here is that there's a mountain of work that has to begin. Right. Voting is just the precipice of what can happen next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, in terms of this discussion, it's like the undoing and then the redoing is the labor, yeah?
I will agree with that 100%. I will agree with that 100%. Okay. I think it's imperative that.
Sorry. We'll definitely continue that conversation. You know we will. But I do want to get started because an hour always seems to go by so fast. So thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Julie Young and I'm the founder of TIDE, for those of you who don't know me. I'm really happy that we are having this discussion today. You know, from the beginning, part of my vision for TIDE has included addressing the filmmaker as a complete person and not just sort of like, you know, the craft of filmmaking. And so I've always wanted to include sort of a mind, body, spirit aspect to TIDE. And unfortunately, the first 2 years, for various reasons, you know, it just didn't happen. But this year, which is probably a more appropriate year, you know, there are no coincidences for sure. We're able to do this. And so one of the things we're offering the filmmakers and anybody who comes across TIDE this year is what I'm calling the Creative Wellness Program. And essentially, we are putting up videos. We have a meditation, a yoga video, a full body workout video, and then we're going to include this discussion under the Creative Wellness Program. So those videos are up on our YouTube. They will be on our website soon. They're free. They're available for everybody. They're really good, like really, really good. And of course, they're all led by POCs. So please take advantage of that. They're really good. So let's talk about it. The format for this is gonna be, I will do moderated questions with Alfonso and Joy, our panelists. Questions from any people that are here. So at any time, you can send either through the chat, or if you want to remain anonymous with the question, Taylor Williams, who is our director. Taylor, you're under Tide Film Festival? Yes, you can send a private, your question privately to Tide Film Festival. That's Taylor Williams, our director, and she'll be taking the questions, and she'll let me know what the questions are at the end. She'll send them to me at the end. Okay, so let's kick it off. Let me introduce one of my favorite human beings in the world. So full disclosure, we are friends. Joy Lieberthal-Rowe, and I'm just going to read this bio so I don't get anything wrong. Joy received her bachelor's degree from Union College and her master's in social work from Columbia University. She is a recognized leader and has been working in the field of adoption for 25 years professionally and through various volunteer organizations. She is also currently in private practice. And Joy works on the counseling team at the Juilliard School for undergraduate and graduate students. She's the co-director of Sejong Camp and vice president of programming at Sejong Cultural, a nonprofit furthering cultural understanding in and among the Korean and American communities. She's co-founder of IamAdoptee.org, a nonprofit website dedicated to the curating of information on wellness and mental health for the inter-country adoptee. Joy and I are both adoptees, by the way. Joy, thank you so much for being here. And then Alfonso Johnson, who I will also read this to get it all right, won top honors at the 2018 American Black Film Festival, winning the HBO Award for Best Short Film for Moths and Butterflies, which he received a 2-year distribution deal with Premium Network. Past recipients include Ryan Coogler, Stephen Capel Jr., and Gerard McMurray. Alfonso's films have appeared in over 100 film festivals internationally and have been distributed on multiple platforms, including HBO, Verizon, Fios, Comcast, Xfinity, and Dish cable networks. Wait, did I get, yeah. As a writer, Alfonso has written content for BET, Warner Media, Bandwagon Media, and Viacom. Currently, Alfonso is an alumni of the 2020 HBO Directors Access Program. He's currently in post-production on his latest short film, Something in the Trees, that examines the life and nefarious circumstances surrounding the death of Dominique Alexander. Warner Media 150 and Alfonso's production company 919 Filmworks are producing Something in the Trees. Alfonso is also in development for his debut feature film, The Legend of Man-Child Kenny. Alfonso, thank you for being here. Alfonso was also in our first class of filmmakers, so he's a 2018 Tide Film Festival alumni. And we screened his film, Moths and Butterflies, which is now streaming on HBO, so everybody check it out. And our director of programming, who's here, hi Karen, had programmed Moths and Butterflies, I believe for New Voices, which is a film festival that BAM used to have. Unfortunately, they're not doing anymore. But so I saw the film there and I said to Karen, we need to have that film at Tide because it addresses the topic of mental health. And, you know, I think at least from my experience, the topic of mental health is not one that's often talked about, especially in communities of color. So Alfonso, can you just give us a brief summary of Moths and Butterflies?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Moths and Butterflies is a love story that examines mental health from the perspective of the other side that isn't looked at. Basically, the living with, not the struggling with. Because living with mental illness is taking your medicine and going on about your life. And I wanted to examine what happens when two people, you know, who have a diagnosis meet each other and fall for each other and bring their quote unquote baggage and how they get through it together.
And let me just take a step back. Joy, this kind of seems like an obvious question, but tell me, how do you define mental health?
So I did my homework, and the CDC, the bane of everyone's existence these days, defines mental health as emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And it affects how we think, act, and feel, helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. I would add, I believe mental health at its best is beginning to understand that we're not just a body carrying a head. Our mind is an organism and needs to be cared for. There's real science in the neurobiology of our brains and how it's affected by chemistry, hormones, stress, trauma, and the environment. The care we take in feeding and nourishing our bodies is equally important, and the ways we abuse our bodies can equally hold true for our minds. Taking care of our mental health is also to understand, synthesize, and organize the way we create stories and choices we enact over our overall well-being and the transactional relationship between our mind and our body.
Wow, that was very thorough.
I was trying to do right.
I didn't know my film was about all of that. I didn't.
Oh, I loved your film, Alfonso. We talked about it earlier. I loved the ways in which you really present in such a human way, all the ways we try to heal ourselves.
Yeah, Alfonso, what was the inspiration behind the movie?
The inspiration behind Moth and Butterflies was, really, when I think about it, the seed was planted maybe about September 19th, 2011, which is my birthday. One of my friends committed suicide. She had hung herself, and it was surreal because I think she was about 24 at the time or something. And I didn't understand that at all, And then the following year, a friend of mine had a mental break. And once again, I didn't understand what was happening. My grandfather, whose ring I wear, he passed away, and I began to feel a plethora of emotions that, once again, I didn't understand. And so then once I began to read and to excavate these emotions and figure out what is the resounding emotion that keeps coming to mind, I wanted to write about it. But then I also noticed that there were things going on around me that people were not discussing. So I started to write about it. In 2015, I began having anxiety due to a litany of things. And I wanted to discuss something that I didn't understand. All of my films come from within me. My first film, Man Child Kenny, everything comes from something either I want to understand or something that I want to learn about. And the greatest journey you will ever take is between both of your ears. And so I wanted to learn what was going on up here for me. And so, I really just wrote from that perspective. And, my best friend is a therapist in Virginia. So we help cultivate the character of Lenny, who had the diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. And that's how we just, brought it to life.
So would you mind sharing with us how your personal anxiety, how was it manifesting? How did you experience it?
At that time, it was a really interesting time for me because I might have had one or two films out, and I was going to film festivals, and I was, there's AJ. My name is Alfonso Johnson. My family calls me AJ, and then there's Alfonso Johnson. And I started to notice that the gap between AJ and Alfonso Johnson, the public persona, was beginning to grow wide, and there wasn't a lot of bandwidth where I could connect it to. And so as the Alfonso Johnson brand began to grow, I began to find ways I was stifling AJ's development. And so the way that would manifest is anytime I had to go to a film festival or anytime I had to be someplace and be on and be Alfonso Johnson, I would get hot. I would, have these panic attacks where I couldn't decide what to wear. And it really became a thing for me where I became rather reclusive. Nowadays you see me in 1,000 denim shirts and, I'm good with it because I'm extraordinarily comfortable in who I am. But it took me a very long time to get there.
So let's talk about that, Joy. Are there any, working at Juilliard, I know you work with a lot of creatives of color. Are there any common themes or struggles that you see with the creatives of color that you work with?
Yeah, actually, I think the understanding that the creative art world in America is very white, and understanding the white gaze in the room. Most of the teachers at Juilliard are white, and most of the work is written and performed or historically been created by people who were white and not people of color. And so many of the students really have to understand not just who they are as an artist, but who they are in respect and relationship to the white gaze, and how to protect themselves. Like Alfonso was saying, these two different kinds of people inhabited his body, and how to coalesce them and prepare and to be safe in an environment that is demanding you to expose all of who you are and to be vulnerable and to be authentic. And then really to protect the authenticity, so that the authenticity of who you are, the integrity of who you are, is not lost in the craft, and also that it's protected and safe as well.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah.
One of my favorite writers, Stephen Andy Girgis, Pulitzer Prize winner, I think from 2016. He used to always say, "Write what hurts." You know, when you can't sleep in your middle of the night, write what hurts, because that's the thing that will resonate. Because it's so specific to you that it'll be universal, because everyone will be able to connect to that tissue that you're trying to get out to the world. But the problem with that is, once you write that pain and you get it out, that shit is on the surface. Like, you know, you can't take something out of your pocket and put it back in. Now it's out, it's on the table and everyone can see it. And now you have to atone with the fact that everyone knows that you're struggling with something or that you're bothered by something. And now you have to take that and make it not be your Achilles heel when someone brings it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, Roxane Gay says that too. You know, she wrote Hunger and talked about, you know, what her experience was as a woman who was assaulted, and, you know, as a woman of color. And then she's like, you know, people stop her in the grocery store and want to share trauma stories, and she's like, I already did that. I wrote the book. Read the book.
Yeah, I was on I did this interview on Sway in the Morning on Shade 45, shameless plug, go check it out. All right. And Sway had a caller call in. He was like, we were taking calls, and the guy talked about seeing someone commit suicide and asked me for advice. And I don't know what the fuck to do. I just made a movie. I'm not that Joy. Maybe you should contact that person. But yeah, a lot of, you know, I don't know how to deal. I don't know. I just know that I have a little pocket where I live, and I feel safe within that little bubble. And my tribe, I operate within that system. I do not know how to fix anxiety or how to heal anxiety. I got breathing techniques. I got a Tibetan singing bowl. I listen to jazz. Sketches of Spain is amazing. You know, but yeah,
That's my writing music. Sketches of
yeah,
Spain. That is literally, that's my writing music. But you know what's interesting about what you're saying, Alfonso, is that even though maybe you didn't have the answer for this person, what it says to me is that your art touched someone in a healing way, even because it gave them the impetus to at least ask. And, you know, if he or she couldn't get the answer from you, hopefully, you know, the art inspired them to kind of seek an answer wherever they could actually find it, you know?
It's
you know,
still uncomfortable.
I mean, I think that's the power, but I think that's the power of creatives, is that that you guys are taking the risk to explore and examine your curiosity in areas of our psyche and in the world and in society that most people don't think about. And so your art, your thoughts, your willingness to say, yeah, this is my story, but I'm going to examine it, gives an opportunity for people to wake up, to be inspired, to be curious. And so there's a personal connection that's made, not necessarily intentionally, but it is a connection.
Right. You know, I want to, on our pre-call, we discussed some interesting things. And one thing you said, Alfonso, was that this industry, the film industry, is a very cutthroat industry, and it's not for everybody. Can you talk about that a little bit? Talk about what you meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a reason why they say the show must go on, right? You know, there's really, like, no matter what, the show must go on, and that's a, you know, it's kind of like life must go on. But even in most circumstances, things stop for a moment. But in this industry, as long as the money and the entertainment is going, keeps on going, that's the most thing that's important. If the lead breaks their leg, understudy comes in. You know, and what I meant by that was that this industry, there's almost no requirements to get in. I didn't finish college. I'm self-taught filmmaker, self-taught writer, was a comedian just by getting on stage. No comedian ever sat me down and said, this is how you do it. You know, if you're good at it, you can go and you can make a lot of money at it. And at the same time, if you are not rooted in who you are as a person, there's a lot of things that can distract you from that and numb the senses, you know. And then, you know, the elephant in the room, which you had addressed in the emails, you know, Tariq Jackson, you know, who was a filmmaker. He was a very close friend of mine, and I love him as a brother. But I hope that if any of his family's watching this or whatever, I hope that they don't take offense to this. But I think that that he had a lot of things that just weren't suited for the industry. I think that the industry is such a terrible, terrible way of spitting on this young and spitting on this old and spitting on anything that is not the norm until you reach a certain point where you're the freak of nature that made it through despite all of the hurdles you've had to get through. You know, even the business dealings aren't correct. You know, it is not until you reach a place where you're respected that things kind of change in your favor. And so I truly believe, like Tariq, he was a brilliant man. He was ferociously intelligent. He was excited. He was insightful. He was excited about life, but he was also extremely sensitive. And a lot of artists by nature are sensitive, but you have to have parameters that you exist within that protect you from the work or protect you from the business side. You know, and he didn't have that, and he was always seeking to approval from everyone. You know, everyone who meets him will say that he was the most happiest, most jovial man in the room, and he was. I want to be more like him. You know, I really do. But there's a level of I'm guarded in that way because I understand how treacherous this business is, and I think that you know, I just wish he wasn't. I wish that he wasn't a filmmaker. I wish that he was a teacher. I wish that he worked at the grocery store or something so that I could call him right now, you know?
Yeah.
And when I say that it's not for everybody, it really isn't, man, because I've watched a lot of people take to heroin, take to cocaine, commit suicide. All in the common denominator is this industry, you know, is this industry.
Right. Just to give a little bit of background, Tariq Jackson was a filmmaker who was a huge part of the Tide family. He was also in our 2018 first class of filmmakers. We adore him, and he sadly lost his life in September. So we actually dedicate TIDEFF 20 to Tariq. His spirit lives on with us, and always remember him. But, you know, so do you think, you know, because like you said, you've seen so many people in the industry turn to coping mechanisms that may not be so healthy, where are the discussions? You know what I mean? Like, are creatives, are you talking about this? Are you all just, you know, what's been your experience around that, the community, creative community discussion around it, if any?
It's not enough. You know, I think just like back in June, when everybody was talking about Black Lives Matter, right? And now here we are in November, and we find out that half the country still wanted for more of the same. Saying, hey man, are you okay? Saying, you know, reaching out, that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
What has to happen is we have to break down the structures that fuel someone to not like themselves, that fuel these negative thoughts and emotions. I mean, Matthew Cherry won an Oscar for a book called Hair Love, promoting hair positivity in Black women. In this world, we should not need to have a fucking book promoting hair positivity. You should already love that. But there are societal structures, European standards of beauty that say, hate the color of your skin, hate the way that your hair grows because you should look like this, you know? And I think that when we remove those structures, then we begin to see ourselves as wonderful human beings. You know, shortcomings, they're different for each person, but that doesn't mean that they're bad at all, you know? And so I think once you remove those things, and I think social media also plays a big role in a lot of those things, once we can start to mitigate some of the negative information that gets out there that can fuel the addiction stuff, because I was told that they make these systems in a way that they're very addictive.
Oh yeah,
So
it's all intentional for sure.
yeah, so it fuels depression.
Hmm. You know, what's interesting is this whole, we're sort of talking about the lack of representation, right? Not even sort of, we're talking about the lack of representation of Black, brown, red, yellow stories, right? In the media
Yeah.
and film. And that's entirely why TIDE exists, because, and, you know, we're connecting it to our mental health. And my experience growing up, I'm Korean and I was brought up in a white family, and having never seen myself reflected anywhere is actually why TIDE exists, because, you know, I think film and media have such a huge influence on how people think, and it can help create compassion between human beings. And so we need more of our own authentic, nuanced, we're actually human beings stories put out there, you know? So, because otherwise, if we don't see it, we think we're not normal. We think we're not a part of the society. You know, if we're absent from the narrative, we can easily be narrative, right? So that's why TIDE exists. That's why we're here. But Joy, can you talk a little bit about that too, about how, you know, the mental health aspect maybe that you see with the kids that you work with, kids of color, and how, like, is that changing at all, do you think?
I mean, I'm old, so I feel like it has changed, right? The arc of change is very, very long. And so when we're thinking about ourselves, when we were 12 and 13 and seeing only one Asian woman in a Hanes commercial, you know, once a week, and that was the only representation I remember seeing when I was a kid. And now we're seeing entire casts on TV and film where everyone is a person of color. From my old eyes, that's progress. But I will say that the small details are where the fractures happen. So if, for instance, if a student at a drama school is only looking at the classics and the classics is only defined as Western classics, and you have someone who grew up in Southeast Asia, that's a very different definition of classics from that student's perspective than what's being taught in a typical American drama school. So I think those are the moments when you're talking about the systemic change, is to really elevate that level of conversation, because that's where it begins. Because the students who don't get to see that then think there is nothing there, then they have to do double the labor to not only learn the craft, but then create the stories. And that's where the rage comes from. It is also where a lot of people give up and they say, why should I have to do everything? And so film festivals like this show other people that they don't have to do everything, that there is a collective, that there is a tribe for them, where they have writers and editors and filmmakers and songwriters in a collective. And that's very, very important. I think it's also really important for all of us to really create our own cabal, if you will, that little network of people that we know, no matter what. It doesn't matter whether we may hit Oscar red carpet, or we are just a homemaker writing a school play, that we have people around us that are always fostering our creative side and encouraging that.
But that means, to me, the people that are around us the most are our parents, our family. So a lot of that starts in the home, you know, and I think that, you know, growing up, you know, I grew up middle class. I didn't want for anything. I'm sorry, anything I needed, I got. Anything I wanted, my mom would say, do you really want that? Do you need? So there was a talk, and she made me understand the value of a dollar. But at the same time, I also had an alcoholic stepfather who had a lot of demons within himself. And every chance he got, he took to make me feel small. So, but I had my mother saying to me that I was brilliant and I can achieve anything that I set my dreams, my eyes, and my heart to. And I could commit to it and be more than my circumstances, that I could be the bigger person, that I could see the empathy in the soul of the person who was negative. And so because I had that, I clung to it. And I find now at 33 years old that it was the upbringing and the ability to know that I was not a representation of my situation, except it was a temporary, like a layover on a flight. my living situation was just a layover. The negative circumstances in which I was around was something that I would not allow to permeate my way of thinking. I would not allow it to permeate into my self-esteem, because I understood at an early age that my mother told me, you are Alfonso Johnson. You can be anything you want to be. And I think that if we instill our children a sense of pride and understanding who they are early on, then I think as we grow, then things will change. We spend, you know, I believe I read somewhere that the average adult spends the entire lifetime trying to make up for their childhood. And I think that that is something that is indicative of the culture we live in. I mean, my movie that I'm developing right now is about a 55-year-old addict who is trying to make right with his children. That is no accident. It was merely a consequence of the upbringing which I had. And so I'm really writing about my stepfather, but from his perspective. And so I think as a way to cultivate the minds and try to foster a sense of confidence, we need to do that young, but we need to work and look at the systems that perpetuate those negative stereotypes and cause us to hate ourselves. And then we have to have the doctors and the support system around so that when there is a level of mental insight arise, whether it be schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, that we can have a hands-on approach instead of a standoff approach. And then we fucking feel bad when something happens, you know?
Yeah, Alfonso, you know, another really significant point that you made on our pre-call was about the fact that so much content that's out there right now in film and media, TV, romanticizes mental health, depression, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think this is the case? Tell me your thoughts and feelings about this. And how did you succeed in not doing that in Moths and Butterflies? Because you really did succeed at that.
I think, you know, Hollywood romanticizes the bad guy, you know? I remember the first time that I learned about James Dean, and how he was young, he was dashing, he was handsome, he was gonna take over Hollywood, but there was a dark side to him, and then he died mysteriously in a car crash. And he's held as this and regarded as this thing. Machine Gun Kelly had an album come out a couple weeks ago called I Invite You to My Downfall or something like that. And I think that when you've been to the dark side, when you know family members who habitually exist in the dark side, who can't get out of bed daily because they're depressed, you don't want to see that anymore. You want to see the other side. So another person that influenced my film Moths and Butterflies was my aunt. She is bipolar. And I saw the mental breakdown up close. I saw it. I saw the degradation of her sanity. I saw it. But now, her and my Uncle Dwayne have a beautiful house in Florida. She's a teacher. She's an active member of society. And I've yet to see a film that addresses that side. Because look, every couple of years, her doses needs to be changed. And so she calls up the doctor, but she's on top of it. And so that is why I focus that part of it, because I don't like torture porn. I don't want to see particularly, I don't want to see anybody suffer, let alone Black people. We've seen that shit enough. So I don't want to see a movie where a Black man is being taken up by the cops or put in an insane asylum, or he's tripping off a crack. I don't want to see none of that. I want to see somebody that can hold down a job, got a beautiful apartment, because that's the life that I know. You know what I mean? I know somebody, my aunt had a beautiful job and then she lost it, but then she got it back and she got her life together. So I wanted to make a movie that focuses on the success ratio, not the other part. And I think Hollywood has a huge part to play in it, you know? A huge part to play in it. Look at all these movies where they romanticize the bad guy. What are the years? Usually high school, right? Usually high school where the bad guy was in the jock or whatever. If they were to do like a part 2, 20 years later, those motherfuckers are in jail or selling drugs, doing something that's not productive. And in the long run, it's always a nerd that win. The people that hold tight to principles and values. You know what I mean? I don't know. Sorry for my diatribe.
So another thing that I do want to touch on, because it's so important, Joy, is, and I know you did your research, is we also talked about trauma and childhood trauma. So, and how that affects us. Can you speak about what trauma is and how it can manifest itself?
I think first of all, I think we all have to just acknowledge that trauma happens for everybody. No one is immune to trauma. But my colleagues and I tend to try to distinguish big T trauma and little t trauma, you know. So when we think about trauma, we think about huge ruptures like abuse, neglect, major mental illness. But I think that the accumulation of ruptures and disappointments can also be equally traumatic. And I think that more and more we're understanding that childhood is hard for everybody. No one gets out of childhood unscathed by something, because all the adults in the room were children once and they didn't fix it the first time around. So I think it's really important to acknowledge it, not to over pathologize it, to understand that there is a healing process through it, that it doesn't ever go away, but we can learn to cope with it and understand it and put it in some chronological past.
And then, so what are some coping mechanisms that you think can help people outside of traditional therapy?
Yeah, you know, I think the older I get, the more I am open to whatever will make you heal. And so when we think about therapy, we think about two people in a room, kind of like a Sopranos style. But I think I've seen people who are clients of mine who have also explored somatic experience and psychedelics and going to a shaman, going to a tarot card reader, going to having different experiences that are beyond just talk therapy. And I think that, you know, earlier on, we were talking about mental health is not just a walking body, walking head. So this relationship that we have to the rest of our body outside of what's going on between our ears is really important. And oftentimes that somatic experience of how we live our life impacts the general well-being of our mind. And that I think that it's more healthy to say, let's try it. Let's see what happens. What opens up for you? What did you learn from that experience? Healing comes in all different ways. At Juilliard, they use Alexander technique for a lot of the drama students. And then a lot of our musicians end up in Alexander classes by the time they're seniors. And a lot of them really appreciate just one class that's dedicated to their body, and how relieving it is of their mind to actually think about something else. So yeah, I mean, I think all is fair game to explore.
Can I ask a question?
Can you ask one? Sure.
Yeah, Joy.
Yeah.
What do you think about the mass commercialization of the mental health industry, and how do you think that it is hurting? Because it seems as though anybody can become a therapist now, or anyone can define something as self-care. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. We really are in a really interesting time. I follow this podcast, this Instagram account about the appropriation of yoga and just the whole industry of yoga, and just how it's been bastardized in the United States compared to overseas. And I think that on the one hand, I am so excited that more and more people are talking about what wellness could feel like. And I'm really excited to know that we're not just taking a pill and trying to make ourselves feel better. But I think that we can almost go to the other extreme and it feels very inauthentic. It feels very ungrounded and very superficial. It to say that I have this XYZ regime and I feel so well, and everybody else, you know, all these like boss lady workouts, and you know, it's like that marketing is not something that's quite my jam. I haven't really gotten around to figuring out why a lot of people are attracted to that. I you know, I think about the writings that like Toni Morrison, just even her voice is
Correct.
so earth, and
Yeah.
and she just dances, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's therapy, right? And so I mean, I think a lot of times people come into the room with, I tried this and I tried this and I tried this and I tried this. And my job is to kind of like peel off all the layers and say, okay, where are you? where are you really in all of this?
Yeah.
And to really strip down all the different attempts. But I understand why it is so alluring to try it on. I feel like our relationship to wellness is kind of at its adolescence right now, where we're trying anything to make ourselves feel good. And yet at the same time, I'm really impressed with so many college students who are saying, I need therapy. I don't feel well. I am anxious. So that repertoire is in their vocabulary is hopeful.
I want to share, I want to, like, if people feel comfortable, share how you cope in the chat. I know I box, I do yoga, I work out every day, so that's my therapy. But I do want to move. We have a question from one of the guests watching. So if there are creative people close to us that have childhood trauma and are still dealing with issues from the past, what is the best way to help without crossing boundaries? Joy?
I think all you can say is that, yeah, make space. Just say, I hear you. I think the acknowledgement, I know in my own first therapeutic experience, just to have another human say, I acknowledge you went through pain is incredibly liberating. And that sense of safety to know that there is one other person who can hold it with you. You know, oftentimes we go to our dark spaces because we feel alone. We feel exceptional in our pain. And when we don't have to feel so exceptional in our pain and know that they're not only somebody else we can talk to, but somebody else we're accountable to, I think that's a very powerful connection. We are social beings. You know, this pandemic has taught even the most introverted person that they need other humans to be around. So I think that that's really important, just to make space.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. Thanks, Joy. To Alfonso's point, as an Asian American filmmaker, the perfect model Asian characters on screen, there's even romanticizing the term tiger mom without truly understanding the mental toll that it has on young children. One of my favorite books this year was Minor Feelings. It did a great job exploring and unapologetically depicting these struggles of Asian families in America. Yeah, who is the author of that again?
Kathy Park Hong.
Yes, that's a great book. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
You know, my father passed when I was 4, tore up the family. I've been in and out of therapy since I was about 5 years old. And while it's and you know, from public speaking and whatnot, I'm a very communicative person. But the best therapy that I've ever had was reading. You know, Frederick Douglass once said that the road to freedom is paved with literacy, freedom of any kind. And I find that when I read about something that James Baldwin experienced in 1946, and I'm presently going through it in 2020, I no longer feel alone. And I often seek out books from people that have lived before my time and gone through it. You know, I have a lot of mentors or friends in this industry that are older than I am. And I say, you know, look, when you were 30 years old, what books were you reading? When you were at this precipice, what did you feel? How did you choose which way to go? Because that is how you get through it. There's no new idea under the sun. There's no new emotion under the sun. Every single problem we're having right now, the Romans went through it. You know what I'm saying? The tribes in Africa, it's gone through it. So now, you know, the way that I find a way to relieve the stress and anxiety of feeling alone or feeling like the pressure on my shoulders are too heavy to bear, I pick up a book. You know, I pick up a book and I try to think my way through it, and I try to just visualize, you know, Steve Jobs at 30 years old when he got fired from Apple. And before he went on to the next thing, I visualized that, and I liken myself to those people, because if they could do it, if they, you know, I think it was Maya Angelou that said if a human being did it, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if a human being goes out and kills somebody, you have the same thing within you to do it. On the other side, if a human being created the cure to cancer or polio, whatever, you can do it too. And so I think about that, and it gives me a lot of strength. Yeah.
You know, and I also, creating art, just being creative is sort of a coping mechanism too, right? It's therapeutic, like for me to write, you know, it's therapeutic for me to do anything creative. It's sort of like, you know, the arts are healing in that way. Do you think that's true, Alfonso?
I think it's very true. I see my man with the red shirt. It's safe to wear your red shirt now after Trump got kicked out, but I see you raising your hand. We're gonna get you. But I think it's very important to make art. I mean, I'm a writer, you know, and so that's how it's another way that I get some of these emotions out. And so I think it's very true to create art. And every time I sit down to write, I think about Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, and James Baldwin. And my goal is to make them proud. You know,
to your point about the reading, and also to the comment by the other person who talked about Asian Americans, and I remember the first Asian American writer I read when I was in my early 20s, when Asian American Writers Workshop just started down on 2nd Avenue down in Soho, and just being able to read the words of someone else who has had and lived a lived experience. The two words that came out, Alfonso, when you were talking, is one, they survived, and two, intergeneration, right? So our elders and our mentors have written books, and to use them as touch points and markers for ourselves is really powerful.
I mean, just think about this right now. Like, we're all people of color who've all been oppressed over centuries of time. We literally are our ancestors' wildest dreams. I know that is on t-shirts and people say that shit now, but we are literally doing, like, Julie, you have your own film festival. Like, that is fucking incredible. You know what I mean? Like, all of us here want to be our highest self. And we are doing that during a pandemic, during one of the most just emotionally taxing times in history, particularly American history, but in history, and at least our history. And we are rising above. We are using every viable option to still connect and to still create and to still be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And I think that is, and I think, you know, recognizing that as an achievement is something is a way that helps to keep the depression at bay.
Right. Let me get to, there's a question, Kyle, I think you have a question. Do you want to unmute and ask it?
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hey.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Joy, Taylor, and everyone who's working on TIDE and put this panel together. I guess this question could be for Alfonso or anyone who wants to chime in, but basically I just noticed, you know, how movies can be so cathartic and such an emotional experience that can help us heal. And that's one of the things that I love most about, you know, film and TV and content. But also, like, as a creative, I know it can be very stressful. And I work in the industry, so I know it's like a cutthroat business, long hours, and not, you know, the most healthy environment sometimes. So Alfonso, like, as a creative, how do you cope with that, with the stress that can come with filmmaking and the pressures, but also, like, ultimately to realize that vision to make it a therapeutic process and healing for the audience?
The question that you're asking is, how do I deal with the stress of trying to get something made? Is that the question? Is how to deal with the stress of trying to get something made while still trying to see it through to the end?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
This is not the most politically correct answer, but this is a truthful answer. I just don't give a fuck. You know, like, I legitimately am going to find a way.
That's a skill.
Most of the,
That's a serious skill. Not giving a fuck is a serious skill.
I mean, here's the reality about Hollywood. Hollywood is a bunch of people who can't do what you do. So they want to find a way to make money off of it and latch their lasso onto you. Now, granted, you may miss things that certain people have witnessed before, and they say, hey, look, that part in the script, you might want to change that. And yes, that can be taxing, that can be annoying, but at the end of the day, no one is going to stop me from making something, period. You know what I mean? No one's going to stop me. So I'm going to do it with or without you. It would be great to have $20 million to make a movie. But you know what? I think that if I have a Kickstarter and I go knocking on people's doors and I launch a campaign, maybe I can raise $100,000 or $50,000, and I will find a way to get it done. You see, the thing is that I don't place my my worthiness on a yes or no from someone who doesn't know me and only values me under a credit. You know, anybody that sees a credit, like something I've done that puts a value on that, they don't mean much to me. I know what I'm worth because I've been through too much. So if you met me at 33 years old and you say no, that doesn't affect me because I know what I've been through to get here. So I think, you know, having a strong value in yourself, and that's the first thing. And really just, it's all a grain of salt. Literally, we are playing make-believe. I guess it's cathartic, but at the end of the day, we are playing make-believe. You know, we are not in Vietnam. We are not, you know, like my father was a Vietnam veteran. From 18 to 20 years old, he was a tank driver. He killed women and children. From 18 to 20 years old, he did that, killed women and children, blew up homes where they thought that the enemy, where the Viet Cong was hiding. That's hard. I'm writing. I sit at home and write. So realizing how fortunate I am is the other thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's the best answer that you can take with you, but that's at least how I see it.
I don't know. I think those were 3 really good pieces of advice. Really, like the don't give a fuck is a serious skill that I continue to work on. Have perspective, and then have gratitude. And I think those are 3 really, really good, solid pieces of advice. Hisani, I see that you have a question.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. This was beautiful. My heart is screaming out to say something. I normally wouldn't do this, but just listening to you guys speak, it reiterates why I submitted to TIDE, is because I need you guys. I need you guys so much, because if there's anybody who understands, it's the filmmakers represented at TIDE, what I'm going through. And I think we talk a lot about trauma, and we talk about trauma, but we only talk about half of it. We talk about what happened as opposed to what's coming. And I think what's coming is just as risky for our mental health and our physical health as what's past. But for me, you will be the reason why I continue doing what I'm doing. The support system, being able to share stories, having someone to look me in the face and say, hey, Asani, don't give a fuck. By the way, my grandma gave me this shirt, Alfonso. No, I'm just kidding. But like, you guys will be going through it and telling me how I can get through it. And I think that's super duper important. And yeah, I wanted to let you guys know that I think it's super important that we don't leave this experience paying lip service to connecting with each other. We truly have to connect with each other because we need each other. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been rejected by a film festival or been told no, or had a piece of equipment go down in the middle of a shoot and had no one to talk to. I need you guys. So I figured I'd be vulnerable and just point that out, because make no mistake, as non-critical as things are, everybody has their reason for doing this. Me being the fact that I'd be the only person in my family who actually did something with my life. Like, I can't die and not do this, because the likelihood of my nephews and nieces going through what I'm going through, just looking for someone in our family who has something positive they've done with their lives, I can't leave it like that. So when I get a no, it's heavy. But what makes it less heavy is hearing Alfonso tell his side of things, hearing Joy explain things the way she does. So I guess I'm just pleading with everybody to, like, yo, take my information, hit me up on Instagram. I'm here for you. And if you want to share your information with me, Lord knows I'm going to need you. So.
Can I say something?
Thank you so much.
To him? Can I respond?
Yeah, quickly, please.
Yeah, first off, brother, I understand, bro. I'm the first one in my family to do something on like this. And I think about my nephews and my niece all the time, you know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, you got to go for it. And I just want to tell you something really small. 10 years ago, before I was a filmmaker, I wrote a bunch of letters to the Gerst agency trying to get representation. I wrote one agent in particular that I really wanted, and my letters went unresponded. 3 weeks ago, I met with that agent. He doesn't remember me. And I'm not gonna remind him, but now he's pitching me on signing me. Stay in the game, bro. Stay in the game. Like just stay in the game. And what is for you is for you. And I'm not gonna go with that motherfucker, but stay with it in the game. You know what I'm saying? Stay in the game.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Hassani, for sharing that. That was beautiful. You made me choke up a little bit. Truly, really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. It is why we're here. We need you, you need us, and we stay in touch with our families. So Alfonso and Joy, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation. I hope you got something from it. I hope you check out the wellness videos that I referred to earlier. Guy Eduardo, the yoga instructor, he is a serious yogi. He is not at all one of these, you know, trendy yoga people. It took me a long time to find him, and he's amazing. He's kind of like one of my spiritual gurus. But Alfonso, do you want to tell everyone where they can follow you, find you? You know, do you want to plug anything?
Yeah, just put it in chat. It's Alfonso on IG. That's the best way because I get to see your face and whatnot. Emails are weird if I don't know you. So Alfonso_Johnson on IG. Don't want to plug anything. I got a film on HBO Max. It's called Moths and Butterflies, what we discussed. And I got some stuff coming, but I'm not gonna really talk about. That's, you know, worth the damn, because I don't know when it'll be out. So, but yeah, just I would love to talk to y'all.
Great. And Joy, is there anything you want to share with us or plug? I know you're going to.
If anybody has unfinished questions that they still want to kind of ponder, I'm happy to respond. If they want to just contact through Tide, I'm happy to be available.
Joy, you're not old, so stop saying that, okay?
Well, I'm happy to be available to anyone if I can, okay? I can leave it at that.
Thank you so much, both of you. This is really just the beginning of this. I plan on having more conversations like this with the creative community. So everyone, please keep in touch and enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the festival. We have an IG Live coming up right now. So everybody go to IG and get on. Thanks
Peace,
so much.
y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.